Announcements.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is with deep regret that we learned of the demise of two former members of Parliament, namely Mr. Vijayanathan Venkatasamy on 12 December 2021 at the age of 87, and Mr. Mohammed Feroz Abdullah on 9th of April 2022 at the age of 51. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Vijayanathan Venkatasamy was born on 21st of July 1934 in Rosehill. He attended New Eton College for his secondary education before being admitted to Hull University in England, where he obtained in 1961 a bachelor's degree in chemistry and physics. In the same year, he became principal of New Eton College, a post which he held until 1980. Mr. Venkatasamy ran for the general election in 1976 for constituency number 19, Stanley and Rosehill, under the banner of the MMM, and was elected third member. In December 1978, he also ran for the municipal council election for Beaubassin-Rosehill and served as mayor of the council until April 1979. In 1977, he was appointed member of the Public Accounts Committee and later acted as chairperson of the committee. In January 1981, he became parliamentary secretary for the Ministry of Finance, a post he held until June 1981. In 1982, Mr. Venkatasamy ran for the general election in the same constituency under the banner of Parti de l'Alliance Nationale, but was not elected. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I request you to kindly direct the clerk of the National Assembly to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the members of the bereaved family of late Mr. Vijayanathan Venkatasamy.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I associate myself with the tribute made by the Honourable Prime Minister to late Mr. Vijayanathan Venkatasamy, former member of the National Assembly, and on behalf of the opposition, I request the clerk to convey our condolences to the bereaved family.
Honourable members, I associate myself with the tribute paid to the memory of late Mr. Venkatasamy, former Member of Parliament by the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Leader of Opposition, and I direct the clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the bereaved family.
The Speaker, sir, Mr. Mohammed Feroz Abdullah, also known as Abdullah, was born on 25th February 1971 in Castel. After his secondary schooling at Quartier Militaire State Secondary School and Sukhdev Bisundayal State Secondary School, he pursued further studies in accountancy in London. He held a professional qualification awarded by the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. He was also holder of a diploma awarded by the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Abdullah ran for the general election for the first time in 1991 in constituency number 15, Lacavéan and Phoenix, as an independent candidate, but was not elected. In the year 2000, he contested the general election in constituency number 19, Stanley and Rosehill, under the banner of the MSM-MMM Alliance and was elected third member. Mr. Speaker, sir, in October 2000, he was nominated to serve on the Public Accounts Committee. On 8th of May 2002, he was appointed as member of the Select Committee on Funding of Political Parties. On 7th of September 2004, he was nominated to serve the Select Committee on the Trust Fund for the Soroptimist Daycare Center for the Elderly Bill. On 9th February 2005, he became the Deputy Chief Government Whip, a post which he held until April 2005. He was also engaged in social work. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I request you to kindly direct the Clerk of the National Assembly to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the members of the bereaved family of late Mr. Mohammed Feroz Abdullah.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm very saddened to learn of the passing of Mr. Feroz Abdullah. We worked together for 5 years at the then Public Accounts Committee, and it's very sad that he died at such a young age. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, may I ask the clerk, on behalf of the whole opposition, to convey our condolences to the bereaved family.
Honourable Member, I state myself with the tribute paid to the memory of late Mr. Abdullah, former Member of Parliament by the Honourable Prime Minister and Honourable Leader of Opposition, and I direct the clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the bereaved family.
Questions?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, my private notice question is addressed to the Honourable Minister of Finance. Whether in regard to the ongoing fall in the exchange rate of the rupee vis-à-vis the US dollar and the ensuing scarcity of this currency in commercial banks in Mauritius, he will state the measures, if any, government and the Bank of Mauritius propose to take to reverse same.
Monsieur le Président, tout comme mardi dernier, je tiens à remercier le leader de l'opposition pour sa question. Cette question me donne une nouvelle fois l'opportunité d'apporter un éclairage sur le sens de l'action du gouvernement en faveur de la population et en premier lieu envers les plus démunis. Pour ce faire, et dans un premier temps, je donnerai rapidement quelques éléments de contexte. Monsieur le Président, en effet, il n'est un secret pour personne que depuis mars 2020, et suite à l'apparition de la pandémie de la Covid-19, un ralentissement notable des activités économiques a été enregistré. Avec 2 confinements et la fermeture de nos frontières, notre économie a été mise à rude épreuve. Au global, Maurice a subi 2 contractions successives. La première de 6,9% pour l'année fiscale 2019-2020 et la seconde 5,4% pour l'année fiscale 2020-2021. Je rajoute à cela que le déclenchement du conflit russo-ukrainien a rajouté un halo supplémentaire d'incertitude, entraîné une poussée inflationniste mondiale et pourrait conduire notre monnaie à se déprécier davantage. À cet égard, je m'appuie sur le récent rapport de la Commission économique africaine des Nations Unies intitulé « The Impact of the Ukraine Crisis in Africa », anticipant une dépréciation de 10% de la roupie, un surplus d'inflation de 2,2% en Afrique uniquement, dû au conflit, et une pression accrue sur les comptes courants de 43 pays africains, importateurs d'énergie et de denrées alimentaires, à l'instar de Maurice. Monsieur le Président, j'en viens à la problématique de l'entrée de devises dans le contexte des 2 dernières années que j'ai à l'instant étayé. Le choc a été particulièrement violent pour le secteur du tourisme, celui de l'export et celui des services financiers. Encore une fois, les chiffres parlent d'elles-mêmes. D'une part, Maurice a ainsi dû faire face à une baisse drastique des arrivées touristiques, c'est-à-dire que nous sommes passés d'un flux annuel pré-Covid de 1,3-1,4 million de touristes pour l'année 2019 à 300 000 touristes en 2020 et 180 000 touristes en 2021. Les conséquences en termes d'entrée de devises ont été majeures, étant donné que sur la période que je viens de citer, nous avons facilement perdu 2,3 millions de touristes. Sachant que chaque touriste en période pré-pandémique dépensait en moyenne 1 200 € par séjour hors transport, le manque à gagner cumulé est considérable. D'autre part, les exportations de biens et services qui avaient rapporté l'équivalent de 191,9 milliards de roupies en devises étrangères en 2019 sont tombées à 128,9 milliards de roupies en 2020 et 132,9 milliards de roupies en 2021. Enfin, le secteur des services financiers, bien qu'ayant démontré sa résilience, a enregistré une baisse de sa valeur ajoutée brute de 51,8 milliards de roupies en 2019 à 49,3 milliards de roupies en 2020, indiquant une diminution de rentrée de devises. Au global, au cours des 2 années de la pandémie, l'économie a ainsi enregistré un déficit de quelques 122 milliards de roupies d'entrée de devises étrangères, rien que sur l'export de biens et services. Monsieur le Président, pour répondre à la question de l'honorable leader de l'opposition, permettez-moi de prime abord de préciser le mandat revenant à la Banque de Maurice et celui qui incombe au gouvernement. Conformément à la section 4 de la Bank of Mauritius Act, la Banque de Maurice est l'entité en charge et en toute indépendance de conduire la politique monétaire et celle des taux de change. Elle seule en est le décisionnaire. Je cite, "The bank is entrusted inter alia with the responsibilities to conduct monetary policy and manage the exchange rate of the rupee, taking into account the orderly and balanced economic development of Mauritius." En vertu de son mandat et pour faire face au déficit d'entrée de devises étrangères, j'ai été informé par la Banque de Maurice que cette dernière a vendu quelques 2,9 milliards de dollars américains sur le marché depuis le début de la pandémie, c'est-à-dire en mars 2020. Je rappelle qu'en 2018 et 2019, Maurice avait reçu un montant de 12,67 milliards de dollars comparativement à 7,35 milliards de dollars en 2020 et 2021, soit une baisse de 5,32 milliards de dollars, équivalent à 230 milliards de roupies, représentant la moitié de notre PIB. L'approvisionnement régulier du marché en devises étrangères par la Banque de Maurice, qui est en charge de la conduite de la politique monétaire, a permis de limiter les perturbations du fonctionnement normal du marché des changes, et cela en conformité avec le régime de change flottant comme qualifié par le Fonds monétaire international. Au vu des perspectives relatives aux performances encourageantes du secteur touristique et en tenant en compte la tendance inflationniste mondiale, la Banque de Maurice a également porté à ma connaissance qu'elle est intervenue sur le marché à hauteur de 25 millions de dollars à un taux apprécié de 43,15 roupies contre 43,25 roupies lors de sa dernière intervention. Monsieur le Président, je vais maintenant élaborer sur la stratégie déployée et les mesures implémentées par le gouvernement pour soutenir le pouvoir d'achat de la population et aussi la monnaie. Premièrement, la réouverture totale de nos frontières en octobre 2021, dans le respect des protocoles sanitaires, a bien entendu été une étape importante pour assurer la reprise franche et durable des entrées de devises. Ce nouveau souffle, c'est la bouchée d'oxygène dont nous avions besoin pour atteindre les objectifs que nous nous sommes fixés. Deuxièmement, le gouvernement, sous l'impulsion de notre Premier ministre, a travaillé d'arrache-pied pour faciliter les affaires à Maurice et maintenir l'excellente réputation de la juridiction comme un centre financier international. Je pense notamment à la sortie de Maurice des listes du GAFI, de l'Union européenne et du Royaume-Uni. Une excellente nouvelle pour l'économie, tant en termes de croissance, d'emploi que d'entrée de devises étrangères. Troisièmement, et sans porter préjudice à la viabilité de notre dette, le gouvernement a également contracté plusieurs prêts concessionnels en devises étrangères. Ces prêts, aux conditions avantageuses et qui plus est, souvent accompagnés de subventions, ont permis de faire entrer les devises étrangères sur le marché local. Quatrièmement, notre stratégie pour faciliter l'entrée des devises étrangères s'est orientée vers l'ouverture de notre économie aux investisseurs expatriés, notamment les seniors. Les budgets 2021, 2020-2021 et 2021-2022 ont fait la part belle à la silver economy. Je rappelle qu'il est estimé que chaque retraité expatrié à Maurice amène au pays une moyenne de 9 000 $ par individu, sur la base d'une résidence de 6 mois par an à Maurice. Atteindre l'objectif de 25 000 retraités à Maurice permettrait, Monsieur le Président, d'accroître les entrées en devises étrangères de 250 millions de $. Enfin, permettez-moi de rappeler les efforts considérables déployés par le gouvernement pour subventionner une large gamme de produits de nécessité par un montant total de 8,2 milliards de roupies. Monsieur le Président, selon la Banque de Maurice, notre monnaie s'est dépréciée de 7,6% en 2020 et 9,2% en 2021. Au regard du contexte historique, la valeur de notre roupie aurait pu être plus largement affectée. Ce qui me fait donc poser la question de la dépréciation de la roupie à l'honorable leader de l'opposition quand lui et ses amis étaient au pouvoir en 2006 et 2014. Une période caractérisée au niveau mondial par une expansion exceptionnelle, à savoir une croissance forte de 3,6% en 2014 et surtout une inflation faible, très faible, de 2,9% en 2014, sans pandémie, sans guerre, ni perturbation de la chaîne d'approvisionnement. Aurait-il cherché à délibérément dévaluer la roupie en 2012 ? La population se souviendra qu'à cette époque, le leader de l'opposition, alors ministre des Finances, avait pris la décision non conforme d'injecter 100 millions de $ dans le but explicite de dévaluer notre roupie. En 2012, alors que l'économie mondiale se portait bien, qu'il n'y avait pas de confinement ni de crise de la Covid-19 et que le secteur du tourisme, avec près d'1 million de visiteurs, apportait des devises étrangères et que le niveau de l'export de biens et services s'établissait à 188,6 milliards de roupies, la roupie a pourtant été dévaluée de 29,9 roupies pour le dollar en 2011 à 31,2 roupies en 2012, la livre sterling de 46,7 roupies à 50,3 roupies et l'euro de 39,4 roupies à 40,9 roupies. Ainsi, en 2005 et 2014, la roupie a été dévaluée de 11,2 roupies par un gouvernement qui se souciait peu du pouvoir d'achat des Mauriciens, en particulier de celui des plus vulnérables. Je conclus en rappelant aux leaders de l'opposition que pour comprendre le présent et pour préparer le futur, nous devons à chaque fois analyser le passé. Monsieur le Président, notre budget alloué à l'État-providence, notre welfare state, était de seulement 48 milliards de roupies en 2014. Aujourd'hui, malgré la pandémie, malgré la crise, malgré la récession, ce gouvernement, porté par l'humanisme du Premier ministre, a fait doubler le budget du welfare state pour l'amener à plus de 93 milliards de roupies en 2021-2022. En y ajoutant le Wage Assistance Scheme et le Self-Employed Assistance Scheme, ce montant dépasse largement la barre des 100 milliards de roupies que nous avons retournés à la population. Ces chiffres démontrent la solidarité du gouvernement, de ce gouvernement, que ce gouvernement fait preuve envers la population. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, just quickly, because of the vast upset in the population, anger in the population about what is happening in the country, I'm going to stick to what is happening this year and forward. But just to remind you that there was hardly any depreciation when I was Minister of Finance, 2 rupees over 3 years. Now, I'm going to go back to 2019. He was appointed on November 2019 as Minister of Finance. In the short space between November 2019 and March 2020, the Mauritian rupee depreciated 8%. That is at 3 times more monthly rate than during the COVID period. So, if we are to believe him that it is only COVID that has led to depreciation, which is 1/3 of before COVID, tell us then why the rupee was depreciated as soon as he assumed office of 8% over just 5 months.
Monsieur le Président, je reviens sur ce que j'ai dit précédemment, c'est que la politique monétaire et la politique des taux de change est le domaine réservé de la Banque de Maurice. Et je me permets de répondre. Et nous, moi en tant que ministre des Finances, et nous en tant que gouvernement, il n'y a pas eu d'intervention directe de l'État pour faire dévaluer la roupie, comme ça a été le cas dans le passé et sous l'ancien ministre des Finances, qui est l'honorable membre de l'opposition actuellement. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
I thought you would have learned his lesson of last week. People out there in Manhattan and in number 12, they want answers now. So I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister. He's accepted the 8% depreciation when he joined office. Now I'm going to ask him.
Order.
I'm going to ask him whether he has looked at the experience of Seychelles, of Maldives, very similar to us, even South Africa, where today their currencies have already revalued to the pre-COVID level. Now, if Seychelles, Maldives, South Africa can do it, what is the problem, what is wrong with Mauritius?
Je répète encore une fois, Monsieur le Président, je ne vais pas relire toute ma réponse, Monsieur le Président. Je crois avoir expliqué le fait qu'entre 2020 et 2021, depuis mars 2020 et octobre 2021, la fermeture concernant le secteur touristique, le fait que nous avons perdu en termes d'arrivées touristiques, qu'on est passé de plus de 1,3 million de touristes à 176 000 touristes en 2021, le fait que pendant 2 années consécutives, on n'était à même pas 20% du potentiel du secteur touristique, et que je rappelle, Monsieur le Président, à l'honorable membre de l'opposition, leader de l'opposition, qui lui-même, dans un passé récent, disait que le secteur touristique, l'effet multiplicateur du secteur touristique est la plus importante à Maurice. Donc c'est sûr que le fait de ne pas avoir de touristes, le fait d'avoir eu les problèmes concernant les listes, l'inclusion de Maurice sur la liste de Gafi, tout cela a pesé lourd sur l'entrée des devises à Maurice. Et c'est une question d'offre et de demande. Si nous n'avons pas assez d'entrée de devises, comment faire pour maintenir? Le fait qu'on est dans un régime flottant fait que nous ne pouvons pas aller contre le sens du marché. L'équilibre est déterminé par la Banque de Maurice. Il doit agir en temps et lieu et aussi regarder le futur. Il ne peut pas vider la réserve. C'est pour cela qu'il intervient. Il a intervenu, je pense, je l'ai dit, à hauteur de 2,8 milliards de roupies pour maintenir la valeur de la roupie, pour freiner, on va le dire, la dépréciation qui devait avoir eu lieu à l'époque parce qu'on n'avait que 300 000 touristes et que les frontières étaient fermées, qu'on avait eu 2 confinements et qu'on a subi plus de 15% de contraction économique. Monsieur le Président, nous ne devons pas, je le dis bien ici, faire de la politique. Je ne fais pas de politique. Si vous voulez que j'aille regarder les chiffres du passé, je peux aller regarder les chiffres du passé par rapport à ce que vous avez fait, par rapport à ce que l'honorable leader de l'opposition avait dit concernant la cherté de la roupie à l'époque, attaquant directement le gouverneur de la Banque centrale en disant que la Banque centrale travaillait contre le développement économique et contre la croissance économique. Monsieur le Président, nous, ici, nous devons faire face à la pire crise économique jamais eue lieu jusqu'à présent. Je le répète, la moitié de notre PIB en 2 années. On a perdu la moitié de notre PIB concernant, je le dis, concernant l'entrée des devises étrangères. Pour cela, il doit, Monsieur le Président, il devrait, le leader de l'opposition en tant que comptable certifié, et aussi en tant qu'ancien ministre des Finances, et aussi en tant que ministre du Tourisme, savoir l'impact de la fermeture du secteur touristique due à la pandémie sur notre économie et sur la valeur de notre roupie. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Monsieur le Président, j'ai un grave problème. Je lui pose une question sur la période novembre 2019 à mars 2020. On me répond Covid. Mais il n'y avait pas de Covid à cette époque-là. Et pourtant, la dépréciation de la roupie, la dévaluation de la roupie a été de 8%. Maintenant, Monsieur le Président, j'aurais aimé demander au ministre des Finances, concernant novembre, le IMF Article 4 Report de 2021, il a soulevé cette affaire-là la semaine dernière, disant que le FMI pense que la roupie est surévaluée, et ceci de 30 à 40% sur 1 an. Est-ce que donc le ministre des Finances vient nous dire qu'il est d'accord, puisqu'il a cité le FMI la semaine dernière, qu'il est d'accord avec l'évaluation de la FMI, que la roupie mauricienne est surévaluée de 40%. Je pose la question en français pour que je puisse avoir une réponse, certainement cette fois-ci, ce qui concerne le FMI et votre déclaration dans cette auguste chambre la semaine dernière.
Monsieur le Président, j'apprécie énormément que le leader de l'opposition pose la question en français et je l'en remercie pour cette question encore une fois. Bien sûr, nous devons tenir en compte, je le dis bien, les notes du FMI. Mais comme je l'ai dit ici plusieurs fois, nous, en tant que pays souverain, en tant qu'État démocratique, nous recevons les notes, les recommandations, mais nous prenons notre décision en toute indépendance. Le FMI, je ne vais pas revenir dans le passé, là je le réponds. Oui, j'ai entendu 40% de dépréciation, que la roupie est surévaluée de 40%. Mais non, nous n'allons pas suivre les recommandations du FMI. C'est pour cela que je viens de vous le dire, la Banque de Maurice, en toute indépendance, a décidé d'aller vers une politique d'appréciation de la roupie en mettant en perspective les entrées de devises liées au secteur touristique. Il vient de démarrer cette politique parce que maintenant les perspectives concernant le secteur touristique sont saines et qu'on est en train de parler d'une reprise forte des activités touristiques. Pour cela, la Banque de Maurice, selon ses conclusions, ils espèrent qu'il y ait plus d'entrées de devises, donc dès maintenant, ils commencent à anticiper cette hausse au niveau des intrants en devises et d'aller vers une politique d'appréciation de la roupie.
Monsieur le Président, l'espoir fait vivre la Banque de Maurice. Very well, but it doesn't feed the population. But, Mr. Speaker, we know that there's been interventions from the Bank of Mauritius. You mentioned 43.15. A few weeks ago, they sold at 43.10 US dollar. It does. Just check your figures. Now, what happens now is that a few days, the rupee falls, and then, of course, it increases because the amount that is put on the market, the $25 million, is about 1/10 of the actual demand for US dollars at the moment. That is the problem. How are you going to satisfy the current actual demand for US dollars? I'm sure you are aware of the pent-up queue that there is for US dollars at the moment.
Monsieur le Président, je ne vais pas m'ingérer dans les affaires de la Banque de Maurice. La Banque de Maurice est en train d'intervenir toutes les semaines pour approvisionner les marchés et il l'a fait depuis 2020. quand on avait fermé les frontières. Donc, ils sont en train de faire leur travail. Je ne vais pas m'ingérer, moi, en tant que ministre des Finances, je ne vais pas m'ingérer dans le travail indépendant de la Banque de Maurice. Ils sont en train de donner, d'approvisionner le marché en devises, et jusqu'à présent, à part certains, et là je tiens bien à le dire, à part certains qui sont en train d'essayer un jeu spéculatif sur la valeur de la roupie et qui retiennent des devises sur leur compte, et c'est pour cela que vous avez des banques qui refusent de leur vendre des devises, mais en général, la Banque centrale est en train d'approvisionner les devises. C'est pour cela que nous avons tous les produits que nous voulons importer sur le marché. S'il y avait vraiment une rupture, Monsieur le Président, est-ce que vous croyez qu'on aurait eu tous les produits actuellement dans les supermarchés? Bien sûr que non. Bien sûr que non. Le fait, cela démontre le fait qu'on ait tous les produits sur les états, sur les supermarchés, dans les boutiques, ça démontre qu'il n'y a pas de pénurie de devises. Il y a une demande de la part de certains pour la spéculation, alors même que leurs comptes en devises sont positifs. Ils veulent acheter des devises pour spéculer contre la valeur de la roupie. Et ça, je félicite, je le dis bien, l'autorité monétaire d'empêcher ce genre de spéculation à Maurice. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I myself severely warned himself, the Minister of Finance and the government, against the raiding of the coffers of the Bank of Mauritius by 158 billion rupees over the last 2 years. And that is the reason why the Bank of Mauritius is so weak today. As for hoarding of foreign currency, I would agree with the Minister of Finance because balances in foreign currency has increased dollars to 834 billion rupees as we speak, Mr. Speaker. Last figures of the Bank of Mauritius, 33% up from last year. So people who receive dollars because they have no trust in this government, because they have no confidence in this government, are keeping the money in US dollars because you can't blame them with a team like this. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to ask the Minister of Finance, en français ou en anglais as you like, tell me what are you going to do to increase confidence in the Bank of Mauritius where you have depleted the reserves and in your gestion de l'économie mauricienne.
Monsieur le Président, je reviens sur quelque chose qu'il vient de dire concernant la faiblesse de la Banque centrale. Ce genre de remarques, je me demande, moi, personnellement, d'où ça sort, ce genre de remarques. En tant que leader de l'opposition, Monsieur le Président, il devrait faire attention à ce qu'il dit, parce que cela porte des coups à la réputation de la Banque de Maurice, de notre Banque centrale. Je reviens sur les faits. Je vais lire, tout simplement. Comment peut-il dire, parler de faiblesse de la Banque centrale, quand actuellement, je vais pas parler du gross reserves, parlons du net reserves. Parlons du net reserves. OK? Actuellement, il y a 4,1 milliards de dollars en net reserves. En 2014, quand il part, quand il quitte cette fonction de ministre des Finances, il n'y avait que, attendez, je vais bien le lire, je prends mes lunettes, 3,2 milliards de dollars. Donc comment pouvez-vous, non, Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais aujourd'hui qu'il arrête de dire des faussetés, qu'il utilise cette plateforme. Comment peut-il parler de faiblesse de la Banque centrale quand on est en train d'être noté par le FMI? Vous pouvez parler de la faiblesse de la Banque centrale quand nous avons subi 2 années de grave crise. Et maintenant, on a quand même, je le dis bien, 4,1 milliards de net reserve. Pas 1, pas 2, 4,1 milliards, Monsieur le Président. Et eux, quand ils sont partis, il n'y avait que, je le dis bien, 3,3 milliards de dollars. Donc, messieurs, et à l'époque, je le souligne bien, il n'y avait pas de pandémie, il y avait des touristes, le secteur financier fonctionnait bien, il n'y avait rien. Et à l'époque, voilà la gestion que vous avez laissée fait qu'à l'époque, il n'y avait que, je le dis bien, et ça je le reprends 20 fois, il vous avait laissé 3,3 milliards en net reserve. Vous voulez parler de net reserve? C'est pour ça que j'ai parlé en net reserve. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Et des net reserves. Monsieur le Président, I'm going to speak of the latest balance sheet of the Bank of Mauritius. Un étudiant en signaux va comprendre ce que je dis. Il y a dans ce balance sheet-là environ 300 milliards d'assets en devises étrangères. N'importe qui va comprendre qu'avec des réserves, shareholders reserves, de seulement 6 milliards, une fluctuation de moins de 5% dans la valeur du dollar mettrait la Banque de Maurice en situation de faillite. Ça, c'est pure mathématique, pure arithmétique. Si le ministre ne comprend pas ça, Monsieur le Président, retournez à l'école, mon cher. Retournez à l'école.
Monsieur le Président, c'est encore une fois les gestes.
Order. Order, there is a reply. The table is something else. Please reply.
C'est encore des gestes, c'est encore des mots. Il prend le balance sheet de l'année dernière et il vient devant et il dit tout simplement que si jamais il y a une appréciation de la roupie de 5%, que la Banque centrale sera en faillite. Monsieur le Président, cela démontre qu'il ne comprend rien, et je le dis bien, rien à la gestion d'une banque centrale. Si vraiment c'était le cas, Monsieur le Président, est-ce qu'on n'aurait pas eu le même problème en 2014? Le A7, à l'époque, c'était quoi? Est-ce qu'il a vérifié? Est-ce qu'il a vérifié? Et s'il y avait... Et je continue dessus. Monsieur le Président, l'appréciation de la roupie dépend de l'offre et de la demande. Nous sommes dans un régime flottant. Il faut qu'il y ait des entrées de devises pour qu'il y ait une appréciation de la roupie. Là, actuellement, au vu de trouver l'équilibre entre le taux d'inflation et aussi les perspectives futures concernant l'entrée des devises avec les touristes, bien sûr que la Banque centrale a entamé sa politique d'appréciation de la devise parce qu'il peut le faire. Il ne pouvait pas le faire il y a un an de cela, et ça, j'en parle sous le respect de la Banque de Maurice. Ah, il y a un an de cela, il n'y avait pas de touristes. Il fallait qu'ils trouvent l'équilibre. On ne devait pas entrer dans la catégorie des régimes fixes, où on fixe le taux de change. Ça, c'est ce que le leader de l'opposition, à l'époque, voulait faire. Ça, c'est ce que le leader de l'opposition, quand il était ministre des Finances, voulait faire en 2012, quand il a intervenu à hauteur de 100 millions de dollars pour dévaluer la roupie. Pourquoi il n'en parle pas de cette période? Quelle était la raison derrière cette intervention? Pourquoi l'avoir fait à cette époque? Parce qu'il pensait à l'époque que la roupie était surévaluée. Et il avait suivi, lui, Monsieur le Président, les recommandations du FMI qui, dès l'époque, disaient que la roupie était surévaluée. Et lui, il a suivi cette recommandation et il a intervenu. Il a mis 100 millions de dollars, Monsieur le Président. Pour faire quoi? C'est perdu. Cet argent est perdu, ça. Vous mettez 100 millions de dollars simplement pour dévaluer la roupie. Monsieur le Président, je lui demanderai de regarder sa gestion et de venir donner des leçons plus tard. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Time over. Prime Minister's question time. The table has been informed that PQB 227 has been withdrawn. MPUT
B213, please.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member will recall that in my reply to parliamentary question B/130 of 6th of April 2021, I highlighted the fact that the composition, powers and mode of operation of a Public Accounts Committee have so far guaranteed its effectiveness and usefulness as the main watchdog of our public finances. Besides, I also mentioned that honourable members always have the opportunity to seek information on the contents of both the report of the Director of Audit and of the report of the Public Accounts Committee through private notice questions and parliamentary questions. Such an opportunity is exemplified by the number of parliamentary questions addressed at last Tuesday's and at today's sittings to ministers on the contents of both reports. Moreover, honourable members have, during the debates on the appropriation bill, the possibility to express their views amply on the contents of the reports of the Public Accounts Committee and that of the Director of Audit. On this side of the House, we do not therefore see any need or any justification to amend the standing orders and rules of the National Assembly to allow debate in the Assembly on these reports. Mr. Speaker, sir, having said this, I hasten to add that the government is not here to condone, nor shall it condone, any mismanagement and wastage of public funds. However, we do seriously and responsibly believe that we need to act on the findings and recommendations of the Public Accounts Committee in its reports, wherever and whenever necessary and justified, rather than engage in more debates and discussions in the Assembly. The House will already have noted that in the last Public Accounts Committee report, it is stated, and I quote, "The general perception is that the reports of the Director of Audit and of the Public Accounts Committee fall on deaf ears, and no significant improvement is noted in the management of public finance." Unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is far from the truth. As a matter of fact, since 2015, after successive reports of the Director of Audit and the Public Accounts Committee, the government has taken numerous steps to ensure that public funds are spent according to the authority of Parliament and that government obtains value for money for all expenditure from public funds. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is both relevant and pertinent that I remind the House of the main measures taken by the government since 2015, following the observations made by the Director of Audit in his successive reports. These measures include the following. In 2015, the Finance and Audit Act was amended to require every ministry and government department to prepare an annual report on performance for submission to the Ministry of Finance. Consequently, a guideline was issued in November 2016 by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development to assist ministries, departments in the preparation of their annual reports on performance. To further improve expenditure management, accountability and transparency, measures were announced in the 2018-2019 budget speech for the Finance and Audit Act to be amended to make it mandatory for ministries and departments to include an implementation plan in their annual report for preventing recurrence of shortcomings reported by the Director of Audit. Accordingly, the Finance and Audit Act was further amended in 2018. The annual report now includes a statement showing an implementation plan for remedial action and for preventing the recurrence of the shortcomings, including wastage of public funds referred to in the report of the Director of Audit. In this respect, the guidelines on the preparation of the annual report on performance were amended and circulated to ministries, departments, and as at date, all annual reports on performance received from ministries, departments include the implementation plan for remedial actions on the issues raised by the Director of Audit. Mr. Speaker, sir, moreover, the government has already taken several other measures which include the following: the setting up of audit committees at the level of ministries, departments to implement the recommendations of the report of the National Audit Office, the Public Accounts Committee, and the internal control units. The submission of financial statements by statutory bodies to the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development within the prescribed deadlines and as per the standards required. The setting up of the Project Implementation and Monitoring Agency to ensure the smooth and timely implementation of projects and budgetary measures. Guidelines for the establishment of risk management in the public sector, the development of appropriate training program on risk management by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Service, Administrative and Institutional Reforms and the Mauritius Civil Service College, and the launching of the Corporate Governance Scorecard by the National Committee on Corporate Governance. The scorecard will measure objectively the level of compliance of Mauritian organizations with governance practices. Mr. Speaker, sir, I must point out that the recommendations made in the last report of the Public Accounts Committee are currently being examined by the ministries concerned. Mr. Speaker, sir, with hindsight, the Director of Audit and the Public Accounts Committee have, in all their reports to all governments, made criticisms on the management of public funds and also made recommendations, and this is certainly not something new. However, what is important is that we accept the criticisms when they are justified, of course, and we take corrective measures so as to improve over time our public sector financial management and accountability framework so that it remains relevant and responsive to present-day requirements and realities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, in this August Assembly, on two occasions, in 2016 and 2018, the former Prime Minister, Sanur Jagnat, stated that the recommendation of the PAC has been examined by a committee of officials under the chairmanship of the former Secretary of Cabinet and Head of Civil Service, and that he is holding further consultation before proposing amendment to the standing order. So may I know from the Honourable Prime Minister why this volte-face of this government, whereas Sanur Jagnat gave the impression that he was all in favour of empowering the PAC and giving it more powers, now today we hear that your government do not want to have the PAC report debated in this House.
Speaker, sir, there is no volte-face. the honourable member has himself quoted what Sir Nehru Jagannath, then Prime Minister, has stated, that there were recommendations and that those recommendations were being examined. But they are being examined. Ultimately, we have come to the conclusion that there is sufficient opportunities for members to study, to debate, to ask questions on the report of the Public Accounts Committee and also, of course, of the report of the Director of Audit. So this is the conclusion, and I've just stated the reasons why we have come to such a conclusion.
Thank you, Speaker. Can the Honourable Prime Minister state whether there is a follow-up mechanism in place to ensure that the recommendation of the Public Accounts Committee report and that of the Director of Audit are being looked into for their implementation or otherwise?
Well, first of all, there is already at the level of the Ministry of Finance a team that looks at the recommendations that are made by the Public Accounts Committee. And obviously, when the report of the Director of Audit is tabled, and instructions are also given to each ministry to see to it that they look at the comments that have been made with respect to each ministry so that they can come forward with any remedial measures that have to be taken. But we also have the Office of the Public Sector Governance, which is set up under the Ministry of Financial Services and Good Governance, and it is mandated to review and monitor the effectiveness of the audit committees that have been set up at the level of ministries and departments. In fact, the audit committees are required to focus on the implementation of the recommendation of the Public Accounts Committee and the Director of Audit. And these audit committees, they have to submit, Mr. Speaker, sir, quarterly reports to the Office of the Public Sector Governance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since we are talking about PSC report, may I ask the Honourable Prime Minister, as pointed out in the last PSC report, where the then Minister of Commerce and Industry gave verbal instruction to civil servants whether in regards to medical procurement of medical supplies, whether there is an inquiry opened up at the level of ICAC or the committee he just mentioned, and as this is a very serious matter, and where matters stand.
Mr. Speaker, sir, there are so many serious matters, but I hope a honourable member will look at his standing orders and know which question is relevant to this main question. And don't come to this house and just say anything like blah, blah, blah.
Order.
Learn your standing orders.
Order.
Go and learn your standing orders.
Order. Honorable Juan, your question is out of order, but I allowed it. It's up to the Prime Minister to answer. And he has told you the truth. And you have to keep quiet and stay within the standing order. Honorable Mia.
Mr. Speaker, every year the Director of Audit and the PAC issue their respective reports highlighting major adverse impact on public finance. And this has been the case for all governments. Therefore, can I ask the Honourable Prime Minister, even if he is not agreeable for a debate of the report of the Public Accounts Committee's report in the House, but at least if he can consider to change our legislation so that those who are found responsible for public misuse of public finance and misappropriation of public finance are brought to task.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am really surprised because probably the honourable member has forgotten about how the PAC works. that is the very one of the very purpose also, is for when the Public Accounts Committee has evidence that there is wrongdoing by an officer or by anybody, they can always refer the matter to the relevant authorities for investigation. It's already there. So what is there new to legislate? It is up to committees to, when they have a sufficient element, to refer matters for investigation.
Honourable Delay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can the Prime Minister thus inform the House whether the existing rules and regulations, whether they will be amended to enable appropriate action to be taken against those officers named and mentioned in the report for breach of standard practice or procedures, and thereby ultimately leading to waste of public funds? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have just replied to this question that was put. Actually, if there is any evidence with regard to any officer or anyone having gone against the law, the matter can always be referred to any of the investigative bodies for them to investigate, and then ultimately, should there be any action to be taken, that those bodies will be taking such action. Now, I am also told that in case any officer is found to be at fault, well, action, of course, will have to be taken. There's no need for, under the existing rules and regulations, so there's no need for any amendment to the law.
And I ask the Honourable Prime Minister if he will consider recommendation of the PSC to the effect that government should come forward with legislation based on SADC model law of public finance management.
SADC model law, well, if I can recall, the model law that is being discussed is still in a draft form. There is no such SADC model law. It has not yet been approved. It is being discussed. Maybe if an honourable member can correct me. Well, here I'm informed that the SADC model law on public financial management is still under discussion and has not yet been adopted by the SADC Parliamentary Forum. But let me add also, I'm not prejudging what is going to happen. It is going to be discussed eventually. Even if it is adopted, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's going to be a benchmark for all countries to look at what is recommended and to see whether it suits the system that is in place. In each country, we must also recognize that in SADC we have different parliamentary systems also with different practices, if I can call that. So I have in Mauritius, we have, in my reply I've stated there are so many measures that have been taken in order to address the issue. Now let me say another thing also with regard to, because we are talking about debate, the PAC is mandated to look at the report of the Director of Audit and make observations, recommendations, of course. Now, if we're going to again debate on these issues, where are we going to end up? It's a question of, let's see what are the solutions. And rightly so, Honorable Mia has said that throughout so many governments, there have been criticisms from the Director of Audit about la gestion des fonds publics. There have been so many remarks that have been made before, when we were in government together, MSM, when the Labour and PMSD were in government, now when we are in government. So we need to look at how we address those issues, how we see to it that there is efficient use of public funds, and obviously, certainly, that there is no wastage of public funds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Members from both sides have been talking about different amendments. And I was made to understand that our parliamentarian system is based on a Westminster system. So I would like to ask the Honourable Prime Minister, is it a common practice to debate on these reports, like example from the UK? Do such debates occur in the Parliament? Thank you.
Well, in fact, I tried to find out what obtains in the UK, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am informed that from advice sought and obtained from the UK House of Commons, that in the Westminster system there is no requirement for reports of any select committee, including, of course, the Public Accounts Committee, to be subject of debate in the House. In fact, the UK House of Commons, the Committee of the Public Accounts, is governed by Standing Order 148. And the said Standing Order does not contain a provision requiring the report of the Committee on Public Accounts to be debated. In fact, as I say, there is no requirement for committee reports to be subject of debate in the House of Commons. So reports are not referred to the House for debate, but can be debated, if desired, that is, upon a motion brought to that effect. And this is what obtains also here.
The Honourable Prime Minister, in his reply, mentioned a series of measures taken by his government to reduce mismanagement of funds, and he also said in his reply that action are taken against officers who has been guilty of mismanagement of funds. Taking this into consideration, how is it then, Honourable Prime Minister, that up to now, no action, no sanction has been taken against any officer, including any ministers who've been involved in the allocation of contract during the COVID pandemic, despite criticism from the directors of audit and in the report of the PAC?
Well, you have been chairing the Public Accounts Committee. Have you been able to find any prima facie case against any officer or anyone? Yes, if you have, then you have omitted in your duty to refer the matter to the competent authorities for investigation. You are condoning, in fact, you are condoning.
Order. Order. Honorable Dano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can we know from the Prime Minister whether any motion has been received by the National Assembly with regards to a debate on the report of the Public Accounts Committee?
Well, if I can recall, Mr. Speaker, sir, there has been, according to the records of the National Assembly, 1969 to date, does not reveal any receipt of any such motion. But let me draw the attention of the honourable members to a parliamentary question B/1222 of the 11th of December 1979 in regard to discussion on the report of the Public Accounts Committee. The reply of the then Prime Minister was as follows, and I quote, "Sir, as far as I am aware, the report of the Public Accounts Committee has never been discussed in the House. The practice has always been for the Ministry of Finance to submit its comments on the report of the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, and this practice will continue," end of quote.
Nous parlons ici du Public Accounts Committee. Nous voyons la réticence du Premier ministre à débattre du rapport de la PAC dans l'Assemblée nationale. Est-ce que le Premier ministre confirme à la Chambre le fait que les membres du gouvernement siègent sur le Public Accounts Committee l'honorable Ramiad, Chief Whip du gouvernement, est-ce que le Premier ministre confirme à la Chambre qu'il encourage tous les membres du PAC à faire une déposition à la police par rapport à ce que certains membres du gouvernement, des gaspillages qui ont été vus par le PAC?
What nonsense are you talking about, honorable member? Really, real nonsense. This honorable member, Mr. Speaker, sir, this honorable member does not understand the functioning of a committee. When there is a chair in the committee, there are findings. The findings are from every member of that committee. Then it is for recommendations to be made. It is for actions to be taken. And it is for the chairperson to refer any case to any investigative authorities. And that is the way we function. Probably he should become a member of that. I don't know if he's a member of that committee. He's not. So next time maybe you will learn how this committee functions.
Le Premier ministre est acculé, il devient agressif. Je demande au Premier ministre de retirer le mot nonsense par rapport à ma question.
Order. You say accusations against members of the government. You said it. You say accusations against members of government. You said that. You have to withdraw that, and I will ask the Prime Minister to withdraw the nonsense word. Both of you.
Du gouvernement n'est pas accusé?
Yes.
Mais il est dedans.
No, you say that members of the government are accused. It may be cited, but this is not the point. You're pointing towards ministers of the government.
I withdraw, okay.
You withdraw that. You withdraw. And Prime Minister will withdraw the word nonsense. Okay.
I withdraw.
Honorable Bilal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I listened to Prime Minister very intently, and he said that his policy is to eliminate wastage of public funds and to prevent recurrence of shortage. Can I ask him, why is it that his government has done away with what we call base budgeting, the program-based budgeting, which was done away by the government when it came into power in 2015. And when you were Minister of Finance, you subscribed fully to this policy.
Mr. Speaker, sir, well, when there are changes, that doesn't mean to say that we become less accountable with regard to the use of public funds. As I have said in my answer, not only do we have to see to it that public funds are being used judiciously, but we have taken a number of the measures in order to see to it that this happens. But of course, it also, I must say, it also depends on officers. They must act in a diligent manner, they must act promptly, and they must see to it that, as we say, public funds should be used in the most efficient way.
Thank you. Can I ask the Prime Minister, who will be Minister of Finance, but that's going through records, how many accounting officers have been taken to task, either suspended, either dismissed by government, following severe criticisms made in many public accountability reports and also recommendations made by that committee? Can the Prime Minister have an indication how many officers have been taken to task, dismissed or suspended, following severe mismanagement of funds? And does it not consider it's high time now to at least implement a fiscal responsibility act and involve all these, I would say, fraudulent acts which occurs in the management of public finance?
Well, as even a member of the opposition has acknowledged, every year the Director of Audit has emitted a number of criticisms with regard to the use of public funds. And that different governments. Now, how many officers have been taken to task? I would certainly look at the period from 2000 to 2005, the period of 2005 to 2014, and from 2014 to date. And obviously, I need notice of that question because I need to find out. I don't have this information with me.
The table is advised that PQ B219, B220, B222, B223, B224, B225, B227 have been withdrawn. Question to ministers. The table has been advised that PQ B241 will be replied by the Honourable Minister of National Infrastructure and Community Development. That PQ B250, 259, 265, 283, 291 have been withdrawn. Honourable David.
B229.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that in November 2015, the Commonwealth Head of Government endorsed the setting up of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub program with a view to assisting the adaptation and mitigation strategies of vulnerable states. Various donor agencies contributed to the implementation of the program of the hub. In that respect, the Secretariat of the hub enlisted the services of national climate change finance advisors to provide long-term technical assistance to the vulnerable states. From 3rd May 2017 to 2nd of June 2020, Mr. Patrick Karani, of Kenyan origin, was the first national climate finance advisor to Mauritius on a 3-year contract. He held a Bachelor's of Education with specialization in economics and business studies, Master's in International Development and Social Change with specialization in economic development, a Doctor of Philosophy in International Political Economy with focus on industrial rationalization within the framework of the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer, and a certificate in leadership and management with specialization in natural resources and the environment. And he had over 25 years of experience in mainstreaming climate finance readiness into climate change policy, sustainable development, environmental matters, clean development mechanism, climate, infrastructure investment, amongst others. Mr. Speaker, sir, in June 2020, following the termination of the contract of Mr. Karani, the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub initiated actions for the recruitment of a new national climate finance advisor, pursuant to an international call from a pool of consultants by the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub and a screening exercise effected at the level of my ministry. Mr. Irfan Tariq from Pakistan had been selected as the new national climate finance advisor. However, Mr. Tariq could not accept the post owing to delays in his release formalities at the level of the government of Pakistan. Consequently, the Commonwealth Secretariat formally engaged with Mr. Nirendra from the Malawi, the second best candidate for the post of National Climate Finance Advisor. The latter unfortunately advised the Human Resources Department of the Commonwealth Secretariat that he was no longer in a position to accept the post. In light of those circumstances, the Commonwealth Secretariat advertised the post of National Climate Finance Advisor ANU, with closing date the 14th March 2022. A total of 7 applications had been received, out of which 5 had been retained following an interim screening exercise. An interview panel led by the Commonwealth Secretariat thereafter undertook an evaluation of those 5 applications from the 6th of April to the 7th of April 2022. The name of the new National Climate Finance Advisor is expected to be communicated to my ministry by the Commonwealth Secretariat within 2 or 3 weeks. With regard to paragraph A of the question, in line with terms of reference, the prospective National Climate Finance Advisor should hold a postgraduate qualification in any of the following fields, namely climate change, environmental studies, economics, natural resources management, energy, project management, business studies, and other related subjects. Moreover, the latter should possess at least 8 years of work experience in climate policy development and management of projects in the area of climate change, energy, forestry, biodiversity, agriculture, and technical assistance initiatives. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part B of the question, I am informed by the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub that Mr. Karani was paid £55,000 annually, excluding allowances and benefits. That is around £4,583 monthly, excluding allowances and benefits. The incoming National Climate Finance Advisor would also be paid the same amount, excluding allowances and benefits, of course.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je comprends dans la réponse du ministre que donc ce conseiller national sur le changement climatique est essentiellement un conseiller sur les questions de finances, ce qui tombe bien parce que le combat de notre pays face aux effets du changement climatique est un combat grandement financier et dans les dernières contributions déterminées au niveau national soumises par l'île Maurice, 100 milliards de roupies doivent être trouvés d'ici 2030 pour financer les mesures d'atténuation et d'adaptation, ce qui fait donc 11 milliards de roupies par an. Puis-je demander au ministre si le conseiller national, donc sur les questions de finances, aura donc comme responsabilité un devoir de conseil auprès du gouvernement mauricien sur les sources et les mécanismes de financement de ces 11 milliards de roupies par an à trouver localement.
Monsieur le Président, let me add that during his assignment, Mr. Karani has been able to mobilize climate finance to the tune of $3,542,857 USD for 2 projects. I am giving this information just to say that, yes, the future advisor will bring his contribution for us to have the necessary funds to finance the nationally determined contributions.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister has mentioned that the advisor was also involved in policy formulation. Can I ask him whether the advisor has made positive contribution in that sense, because our nationally determined contribution for 2030 and 2050 timelines do not quite have clear targets at this moment in time. How to achieve these targets at this moment in time?
Monsieur le Président, je pense que l'honorable membre sera d'accord avec moi que le libellé de la question, cela concerne principalement hired under the Commonwealth Climate Finance Hub. He will state if the latter holds office on a permanent contractual basis, indicating qualifications, experience, monthly pay packet. Si l'honorable membre vient de l'avant avec un substantive question concernant le policy decision, je me ferai un plaisir de lui répondre, Monsieur le Président.
Next question.
B230.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Wastewater Management Authority that the region of La Tour-Kenick in Pointe-de-Sable is partly sewered. The NHDC housing estates, Cité Débat Kader, Cité Ilois, CHA estates and the industrial zone are connected to the public sewer network, while Terrasson is an insured area where the inhabitants have an on-site disposal system. The Wastewater Management Authority has received requests from the residents of Terrasson and neighboring regions for the provision of sewer facilities in order to mitigate the nuisance caused by overflow of pits. The Wastewater Management Authority has assessed that the permeability of the soil is quite poor. A survey was thus carried out in the region to check the feasibility of connection to the main sewer line, and in order to ascertain the extent of the area to be sewered, a pre-feasibility study report was prepared in-house by the Wastewater Management Authority in December 2014. The regions identified were Terrasson, Vergemont, Canfiringa, Pointe-Sable, Petit Verger, and Kensington. The pre-feasibility study recommended that a length of 41.8 kilometers of sewer had to be laid to connect 4,000 households, and 5 new pumping stations had to be constructed. The cost of connecting the above regions to the public sewer was estimated at more than 2 billion rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of the considerable investment involved, it was decided in 2015 that the project be implemented in phases. Thus, the region nearest to the existing public sewer network, that is Kensington, was identified as the first phase of the sewer project. The House may wish to note that the sewerage project at Kensington has been completed in September 2018 with 138 houses connected to the public sewer. Moreover, given the acute sanitary and environmental nuisance prevailing at Flat Guillard due to overflow of wastewater from cesspits and septic tanks and complaints received from the inhabitants, the local authority and the sanitary authorities, the Wastewater Management Authority is currently implementing a sewerage project at Flat Guillard. Same is expected to be completed by February 2023. 64 apartments will be connected to the newly constructed sewer network along the municipal roads, namely Avenue des Peupliers, Jacquier, and Olivier Street. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the remaining areas to be sewered, the Wastewater Management Authority will hire the services of a consultant in the next financial year to prepare the phasing of the implementation of the project. The consultant will be required to take into consideration the complexity to sewer the whole region of Pointe-Sable, the upgrading of the Montagne-Jacot wastewater treatment plant, and the construction of new pumping stations, including the upgrading of existing ones, as well as the sanitary situation prevailing at the various areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. On a short-term basis, can the Minister ensure that the WMA provide free pumping services to the inhabitants of Terrasson on a regular basis, if possible, because at least at the hardship cases of septic tank overflow, I have a picture with me I can table to the Minister that the situation is getting worse at Terrasson and also on the main road at Pointe-Sable, just in the corner of La Touquenique Road.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Wastewater Management Authority provides such services. But honourable members should understand that wastewater projects involves a lot of money, and the Wastewater Management Authority have to find the required funds to implement those projects. As it is in that constituency, let me bring to the attention of the House, the Wastewater Management Authority is already implementing projects in the region of Pai worth more than 1 billion rupees. So providing free service, the services will be provided whenever required, but free services cannot be considered at this stage, Mr. Speaker, sir.
I'm grateful for the project done at Kensington mentioned by the Minister and even the one that is starting at Flat Guillard. But concretely, Honourable Minister, we wanted to know when you're starting the project at Terrasson. There has been so many requests, there has been so many reported cases through the CSU, and at the time I'm talking to you now, the people are just unaware of the situation. When is the ministry going to start the project? You said there has been a feasibility study, and it dated last 2014, 2015. So we are 5 years away now from the feasibility study.
Yeah, I do understand the situation, Mr. Speaker, prevailing in that region with regard to wastewater. And it is for this reason when they did that pre-feasibility study, which was estimated at 2 billion rupees, the Wastewater Management Authority decided to implement the project in phases until a feasibility study was carried out. I have told the Wastewater Management Authority to do the needful. That is why in the last paragraph of my reply, I said that we will hire the services of a consultant in the next financial year. We cannot do more than that. And from there, we are going to give priority to the region of Terrasson whenever we implement the project for the whole area, because I understand that the biggest problem is in the area of Terrasson. We are going to give priority to the region of Terrasson when we will be implementing the project for that region, Mr. Speaker. Sir.
Since the minister mentioned the work that's being done at Flat Guillard, can I find from him if he has information whether the surrounding of Flat Guillard also will be connected, or it will be only the apartments that he mentioned earlier?
Yeah, from what I understand, Mr. Speaker's information that has been conveyed to me by the Wastewater Authority is that only Flat Guillard will be connected to the main sewer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The table has been advised that it will be 296, 298, 311, 273, 292, 313, 254, 266, 276, 281, 285, 271, 299, 303 have been withdrawn. Honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.